On the radio station, it's been a month of developments and growths with the listeners, but also more and more partners joining with us. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Leslie Cheeseman, the CEO of Agape UK, to the Breakfast Show. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, Gareth. It's so exciting to be with you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
We both have, because I think the initial conversations, they were about 2 months ago. And these kind of things, it's not just overnight. It takes a while for us to get it sorted and for you to get it sorted. But honestly, I'm so excited to have you on. And what we're going to be doing every Wednesday at 9:30 is chewing the fat a little bit and going through some of the big news stories that you've brought to us. But what we wanted to do this week is to just tell our listeners what Agape is all about. So you may have heard me basically destroying the opportunity that I did.
No, you did a good job.
I got the main bits out, and then I got a bit cocky, I'll be honest with you. And I started delving into the history of the organization and probably got it completely wrong. So you'll do a lot better job than I did. So tell us what Agape UK is all about.
Well, we're all about Jesus, Gareth. And we're all about helping people to discover Jesus. And like you say, inspiring them to discover Jesus at work, at home, at university and abroad. You got it right, Gareth. I mean, you did a good job. But really, that is the heart of what we're about. And in fact, we've been working in the UK for over 50 years, but around the world, we've been working for over 70 years. And we're part of an amazing sort of international kind of family of people who are working in about 196 countries. So it's just very cool to be a part of something that is exciting things that are happening around the world. And at the core of everything for us is about helping people to discover Jesus and navigate the kind of the big questions of life and just the facets of life and how to navigate those things. Because we think the thing that's key for us is that we think Jesus makes a difference to every area of life. Like you said earlier, it's not about just going to church, but actually it's about the fact that Jesus makes a difference in our home lives and in our communities and the way that we relate to one another. And so one of the things that we're really passionate about is helping people to discover Jesus and see the difference he makes in our relationships with one another. And so through our work, we sort of have all sorts of things in terms of helping people to navigate handling conflict, in relationships, there's often conflict. So, how to handle conflict, how to sort of build real community, how to connect well with your neighbors and all that kind of thing. But also in your work life, we think Jesus makes a difference in your work life. And how do you navigate all sorts? I mean, I'm sure you have a great work life, Gareth. You work in a great place, you have a great thing, but our work life is complex, isn't it? But how do we navigate our work life and how we can sort of have a positive impact in our workplace? Our work over the last 50 years primarily has been around student work, but that's not the only thing that we do. But that's a big part of what we do, working with students, working in universities, helping students to navigate the big questions of life and faith in God. That's such an exciting time, university years, isn't it? Where students are navigating kind of like they're asking the big questions. And so we love to work alongside university students, helping them to navigate that time, engaging with them on the big questions. But we're also really passionate about seeing how Jesus makes a difference in practical ways as well. And so we partner with an organization called GAIN, where we do all sorts of humanitarian work around the world as well. So, but at the very heart of what we're about is helping people to discover Jesus together. So building communities around engaging on the big questions of life and faith in God.
So if it's been going 50 years, you must have started working there at the age of 2, which would mean that you're the youngest CEO in the history of the world. It is interesting, isn't it, though? Because I think one of the most damaging things to Christianity is when people go to church on a Sunday and then they go away from church and that's it. And they don't actually show Jesus Christ in everyday life. It's almost like those 3 hours a week, if you saw them, you'd think that they're basically the Archangel Gabriel at church on a Sunday. But then during the week, they're not showing that in their actions. They're not showing it in their language. So I suppose Agape, they can help to do that, can't they? They can help to sort of take that church benchmark of how you should be in church and put it into everyday life.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And that's a big part of what we're doing right now, is working alongside local churches in helping people to do that, to see how their faith works out beyond the four walls of church or wherever their church meets. Sort of, what does it look like for the rest of their week? And I suppose, you know, wherever someone's at, we engage with people at all sorts of sort of points in their journey, if you like. So whether they are exploring questions about faith, helping them to discover Jesus, to explore who Jesus is, but also, like you just said, if they are followers of Jesus, helping them to sort of deepen their relationship with him and working out how does their faith matter in their home life, how does their faith matter in their, you know, in their neighborhoods when they're chatting to their neighbors next door, or they've got issues with their neighbors next door. How does their faith matter in that situation? How does their faith matter in their work life? Most of our time, if we're in our working time, sort of so much of our life is in our work. And so how does our faith matter in those places? And so, yeah, it's just helping people to grow in their relationship with Jesus, and also finding ways to confidently talk about their faith. Because I think also for a lot of people, it's quite challenging to find ways to talk about Jesus in their everyday lives. And so that's something we get very excited about, helping people to do that, to grow in confidence, to find a language to talk about Jesus in natural, normal ways. Because sometimes we have a language in church that is just it's like a foreign language to most people.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because we try to do that here on the radio station. And again, I think that sometimes we allow ourselves to go a bit weird because we're Christian. Does that make sense? It's almost like if you take away the fact that you're a Christian, if you were to go up to somebody in everyday life and say, I've got a word for you, and I think you need to do this, you need to do that, then if that person isn't a Christian for a start, they can get a bit freaked out by that. I mean, I get freaked out by that as a Christian. When other Christians come over and say, I've got a word for you, I'm like, okay. And then I start asking questions. Well, why has the word not come to me directly? Now, that, of course, is a theological conversation that we could have another time. But it's really interesting what you guys do, because you help people to, I suppose, just talk about their faith in everyday life, but not in a way that will just sort of make people walk off, make people think, oh, we've got one of those crazy Christians in the workplace.
Exactly. And also it's about making it a conversation, isn't it, Gareth? That I think sometimes we can do a lot of telling, but actually, how do we make it a conversation? And some of it is asking great questions. And that's, in fact, that's one of the things on our website we try to do, is think about the kind of questions that people have. And we've got all sorts of articles on there to engage with some of the kind of how to engage with some of those big questions about, how to have healthy relationships, how to handle conflict, and it takes sort of our faith in Jesus from something sort of slightly strange, in a box, in like a compartmentalized part of our life, and actually shows how Jesus makes a difference in every part of life, and sort of being able to have great conversations about that and talking about it in normal, everyday ways.
So what we're going to do, we'll play a song and then we'll come back to Leslie, because I want to prepare her for what we're going to ask. And what I want to ask you is a few tips as to how we actually start those conversations. So I want you to imagine that we're in the kitchen of an office, and this is what kind of happens. It's the place where gossip usually starts. So how do you sort of initiate those conversations that people know that you're a Christian? And how do you start that conversation off? So that's what we're going to do next. We're joined by Leslie Cheeseman from Agape UK. Oh, using the Connect Radio mug there. We love it. On brand. Look at that. Advert. If you have got any questions for Leslie, then send them through on WhatsApp. We'd love to hear from you. The number is 0161 511 9555. 0161 511 9555. But most of all, show them some love. Go over to their website, agape.org.uk. agape.uk. They're on the socials. Give them a follow. In fact, send them an email if you want and just say, we've got you on and thank you for joining the Connect Radio team. Go and look for them on the socials. Give them a follow. Give them an @reply. Because you see, without our partners, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So it's only fair that we give them some love back. This is Connect Radio, and we're joined by Leslie Cheeseman, the CEO of Agape UK, our newest partner, our newest sponsor. Looking forward to this because she's going to be joining us every Wednesday at 9:30, and we'll be going through some of the big news stories that have happened this week or next week, the week after. So thank you for your questions. I'll tell you what, sometimes we should hand over the production of this show to our listeners because you do come up with some great questions. And Eric's been in touch and he says, when I went to Big Church Day Out, I'm sure I saw something to do with a cinema and Agape. I'm glad you asked. Thanks for sending this through. So Leslie, tell us about this because this was incredible, actually.
Yeah, we had such a great time at the Big Church Festival. It was so fun. We had a big Agape cinema and we were showing clips of a film, which is actually the most viewed film in history that we made in 1978, I think it was, called The Jesus Film. It's crazy.
So it's the most watched video in history?
It's the most viewed film in history, and it's the most translated film in history. It's been translated into 2,000 languages. So it means that around the world, it's very difficult now to find a language that somebody can't watch the film in their own language. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So we were showing clips of this film and talking about, and we had Pete Gregg and Governor B just talking about why Jesus is amazing and how amazing it is that we can get to talk about him with other people. And so that's what we were all about. So we had over 2,000 people come and watch our little film, and it was so fun. It was really fun.
Is this something that you do at all events where you take this big cinema there?
No, we made it especially for this Big Church Festival. It was a bit of a crazy plan, but it was really fun. And we're already talking about maybe what could we do next year.
One thing you don't want to do is to set the challenge of, I don't think there's a language that it hasn't been translated into, because one of our listeners, I'm sure they'll take pride in going, well, actually, has it been translated into this? And it'll be a language which is probably spoken by 5 people on a desert island out at sea somewhere.
Well, so, I'd love to give that challenge, Gareth. Tell us that. Give us that challenge.
In fact, if that is the case, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll fly those 5 people over to the UK and they can be at the exclusive showing of the film when it's been translated into that language. How does that sound?
That would be amazing. I would make that happen.
So just tell us again in a few sentences what Agape UK do.
Yeah, so we're about helping people to discover Jesus, whether it's discovering Jesus for the very first time, whether they're exploring faith, where it's helping people to grow in their relationship with Jesus, or whether it's helping them to help other people to discover Jesus too. So that's the heart of everything we do. And in the workplace, in people's home life, in university life, and around the world, that's what we do.
And I'm sure you agree that in the workplace, it can be difficult because you've got so many different types of people there. You'll have people of no faith, people of different faiths. So I guess my question to you, and it's a bit of a challenge really. So imagine this, we'll set the scene. We're in the kitchen of the office at the moment, where usually it's where all the gossip happens and the backbiting and stuff like that. So what tips would you give to somebody of how to share their faith at work? So I suppose the do's and the don'ts. How do we go about it?
I think the first one is not joining in with the gossip, because I think actually the way people notice how we live our lives. They notice when we are being slightly different, not in a weird way like we were talking about earlier, but actually being slightly different. If we're not joining in the gossip and the backbiting, that actually makes a difference. And I think that's something that's really incredibly powerful when we live a life that doesn't just talk about what it means to know Jesus, but actually demonstrates in action what it means to know Jesus. Does that make sense? So I think first of all is not joining in with that, but I think also it's about sort of asking some great questions, and being inquisitive. One of the things that I think is really powerful is being a person who's inquisitive, trying to understand the person in front of you and why they think the way they do. What is that perspective? So having some great questions up your sleeve, to kind of lean in and sort of try and understand the person that you're engaging with over coffee in the kitchen. I think also one of the things that's really important as Christians in the workplace is also being open and vulnerable about our own struggles ourselves. So actually that we haven't got it all together, that actually as we sort of engage with people, actually being able to be open and honest about our own struggles in life. And I think the other thing as well is being able to also talk about our own story, about the difference that Jesus has made in our lives. But I would say that it's important to kind of like start where people are at. You know, sometimes we jump far too far in the conversation, and they're not there in that conversation. They're actually sort of asking these questions early on, sort of, so what was your background? Sort of what was your upbringing? Sort of what's your family life like? Actually learning about someone's own, like, particularly in the workplace, learning a bit more about who they are outside of the workplace. And so, you know, tell me a bit about your family. Tell me a bit about what it was like for you growing up. Tell me what it's like for you right now at home. How are the kids? Because actually it demonstrates that it's about someone's whole life rather than just who they are in their workplace. So I'd say that's the first one, is to be inquisitive, ask great questions, don't join in with the backbiting, but rather than criticizing, sort of demonstrate a different way of talking about other people. One of the things that I like to do, I used to work in a bank before I worked with Agape, and this used to happen in the bank. And one of the things that I liked to do was to talk about the people that they were talking about, but in different kind of way, and sort of talking about them positively. So that's, I think, also really important.
And it's interesting because if you start talking about somebody positive in a positive way, I should say, then other people around you tend to start following. And it's almost like does this sound weird if I say it's almost like a pleasant virus?
Yeah, I think so.
Usually we're like, a virus is a bad thing, but a positive virus that spreads around, and it goes on and it goes on. So really interesting stuff, and we can't wait to have you on in the future weeks. And thank you from all of us here to all of you over there. Thank you for joining with us, and thank you for being part of this mission that we're trying to do, and we want to be part of your mission as well. So what we'd like you to do actually is to head over to Agape's website. It's agape.org.uk. But something, I guess your call to action is, will you post on the socials about Agape? Maybe you can add it to your stories, the fact that we've had them on. Tag them in it, tag us in it, and we'll add it to our story as well. Leslie, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
we'll
Karen.
have you back on next week. Love to you and the team. We can't wait for it. And now to this.